He only asked her to refill his water. But when billionaire tech founder Robert Thorne turned back from signing the check, his 4-year-old daughter, Lily, was gone, and the young waitress who had just smiled at them was walking her out the door, hand in hand. This was no random crime. Robert Thorne was one of the most connected men in the state, a fortress of wealth and security. Yet in a crowded family restaurant, a complete stranger, a waitress named Emma, simply took his child. The question that would tear a community apart wasn't just how she did it, but why. And the answer would reveal a secret Thorne had buried for years. Robert Thorne's empire was built on connection, a revolutionary app that linked millions. But his personal life was defined by a severing. 2 years earlier, his wife, Claire, had filed for divorce under a confidentiality clause so strict the court records were physically locked away. The public story was amicable separation. The private reality was a bitter 5-month custody war over their daughter, Lily. Claire's petitions, accessed for this documentary, cited a pattern of what she called controlled isolation and emotional neglect. She claimed Thorne's obsession with work left Lily in the care of a rotating staff of nannies for weeks at a time. Thorne's legal team countered with expert testimonials painting Claire as unstable. In the end, the judge granted joint custody, but with a catch. Thorne's parenting time was to be supervised by a court-appointed specialist for the first 6 months. Thorne chafed under the observation. He saw it as a humiliation engineered by Claire. The supervisor, a woman named Dr. Evans, filed reports noting his impatience with routine and tendency to prioritize business calls over child engagement. But she also noted Lily was healthy, well provided for, and voiced no fear of her father. The supervision order lapsed. Thorne thought he'd won. He threw himself into being the perfect public father, donations to children's hospitals, candid photos at parks. The narrative was repairing itself. Then, 7 months ago, Claire Thorne was killed in a late-night hit-and-run. The case remains unsolved. Robert Thorne, as sole surviving parent, was granted full custody of 4-year-old Lily by default. The funeral was a quiet, private affair. Thorne told reporters his focus was on his daughter's healing. He hired a new, highly recommended nanny, increased security at his estate, and tried to establish a stable routine. But Lily changed. She stopped speaking in full sentences. She had nightmares. Court-ordered child therapists noted regressive behaviors and signs of traumatic stress, but could not determine the source. Thorne blamed the grief of losing her mother. Everyone agreed it was plausible. This was the man who walked into the Sunrise Diner on October 12th, a grieving billionaire, a widower under suspicion, a father struggling with a silent, troubled child. He chose it precisely because it was anonymous. No 5-star ambience, no one asking for an investment, just pancakes. And that's where he met Emma, not as a person, but as a function. A smiling, efficient waitress in a faded blue apron who remembered Lily liked whipped cream on the side. She was gentle, patient. When Lily dropped a fork, Emma was there with a clean one before Thorne could look up from his phone. He began requesting her section. It felt like a small victory, a moment of normalcy for his daughter. What Robert Thorne didn't know was that Emma had been watching for 3 weeks. Her real name was Caitlin Morse. She wasn't a career waitress. She was a former family court advocate from the very county where Thorne and Claire's custody battle had raged. She had left the job 8 months prior, after a high-profile case involving a neglected child ended tragically. Her colleagues said she burned out. She told her landlord she was moving for a fresh start. She used a friend's identity to get the job at the diner. She studied Thorne's schedule, his patterns. She knew he came every Tuesday and Thursday morning after Lily's therapy appointment. She knew he would be distracted, taking calls, signing digital documents. She made herself indispensable and invisible. The day it happened was a Thursday. Thorne was finalizing a merger worth over $200 million. His phone buzzed incessantly. Lily, agitated from her therapy session, was coloring frantically. Emma brought over extra crayons. She knelt beside the booth and said, "Hey, sweetie, your dad looks super busy. I've got a special coloring book in the back. Want to come help me find it?" Lily, familiar with this kind woman, nodded. Thorne, half listening, mumbled a thanks, Emma. He watched them walk toward the kitchen door, assuming the back room was just behind it. He turned back to his phone. But the kitchen door didn't lead to a stockroom. It led to a rear exit, an alley, and a waiting car borrowed under a false name. Emma had 60 seconds. She lifted Lily into the car, buckled her in, and slid behind the wheel. She did not speed. She drove the speed limit, disappearing into midday traffic. Back in the booth, 90 seconds passed. Thorne looked up. Lily, he stood. Emma, he pushed into the kitchen, startling line cooks. "Where's my daughter? Where's the waitress?" The manager stared, confused. There was no special coloring book, no Emma in the back. The first police theory was ransom. They waited for a call that never came. Thorne's security team, led by a grim ex-federal agent named Vasquez, dug deeper. They found Caitlin Morse. They found her past. They found her connection to the family court system. And then Vasquez found something else, a file on Morse's home computer, deleted but recoverable. It wasn't a ransom note. It was a dossier on Robert Thorne. It included not just the public divorce, but medical records, sealed therapist evaluations of Lily from after Claire's death, and logs of Thorne's whereabouts that the police never had. And at the top of the file, a single chilling sentence: pattern matches prior case file 4517. Risk of repeat imminent. Protective intervention authorized. Vasquez showed Thorne the sentence. What prior case file? What does this mean? Authorized? Who authorized her? Thorne had no answer, but as he stared at those words, the first crack appeared in his furious certainty, because that phrase, protective intervention, was a specific legal term, one used by social workers, not kidnappers, and the case file number it referenced was from the County Child Services Department. The police were now hunting a kidnapper, but Vasquez, watching his boss's face pale, began to suspect they were all asking the wrong question. The real question wasn't where Emma had taken Lily. It was what she was protecting Lily from. And as Thorne's phone finally rang, with an unknown number flashing on the screen, the answer to that question was about to rewrite every truth he thought he knew. Thorne answered the unknown call, expecting a kidnapper's demand. Instead, Emma's voice was calm, clear, and utterly terrifying. "She's safe, Robert. Safer than she's been in months. But if you call the police again, I will release every document I have to every news outlet in the country, starting with the therapist's report from June 7th. Thorne's blood ran cold. That report was sealed by court order. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice a low growl. "What do you want?" "I want you to listen," Emma said. "Lily is drawing right now. She's drawing a house with a red door and a black car. She draws that car every single day. Do you know why, Robert?" He didn't. The therapist had mentioned recurring themes of a scary car, but attributed it to the trauma of her mother's hit and run. Emma continued, her tone shifting from calm to cutting. "Because she saw it. The night your wife died. She was in her window seat, watching for Claire to come home. She saw the car speed up. She saw it not stop." The line crackled with silence. Thorne's mind reeled. The police report stated Claire was alone, walking on a deserted road after her car broke down. There were no witnesses. "That's impossible," he whispered. "She never said." "Of course she did." Emma's composure broke, a raw edge of fury slicing through. "She was 4 years old and terrified, and every therapist you hired wrote it off as grief, but I read their notes. The progressive detail, Robert, the specific make of the car she described in July, a black sedan with a broken tail light. It matched the paint flecks found at the scene. That detail was never released to the public." Thorne slumped against his car. Vasquez, listening on a secondary line, began typing furiously, cross-referencing the sealed police file. Emma wasn't finished. "Case file 4517, that's what you wanted to know, right? Pull it up. It's from 5 years ago. A toddler named Ben, wealthy father, mother died in a suspicious accident. The child witnessed it. The father, a powerful man, dismissed the child's account as fantasy. The court, swayed by expert testimonies paid for by the father, granted him custody. 6 months later, that child was hospitalized with unexplained injuries. He didn't survive the year." Her meaning landed like a physical blow. "You think I hurt my daughter?" Thorne's voice was hollow. "I think the system failed Lily's mother, and it was failing Lily. The pattern was identical. A contested custody battle, a tragic, unsolved death of the opposing parent, a child displaying acute trauma that the remaining parent's resources explained away. and a series of escalating accidents waiting to happen. Accidents? What accidents? Thorne roared. The poisoned snack at the country club picnic in August. You called it a severe allergy, but the EpiPen in her bag was expired. The near drowning in your pool in September when the nanny briefly looked away. The bruised ribs last month you said were from a fall off her bike, but the bike had training wheels and was found in the garage untouched. Emma listed them with chilling precision. Individually, tragic mishaps, together, a pattern of neglect escalating to harm, a pattern I've seen before. Thorne's world fractured. Each event had a logical, terrible explanation. The snack was cross-contaminated, the nanny had been fired, the bruise he'd been on a conference call when it happened, he'd believed the housekeeper. Now doubt, toxic and thick, flooded in. Emma delivered the final blow. Your head of security, Mark Vasquez, he was the lead investigator for the father in case 4517. He wrote the report that discredited the child's testimony. He now works for you. What are the odds, Robert? The call went dead. Thorne slowly turned to look at Vasquez, who was staring at his own laptop screen, his face ashen. He had just pulled up the old case file. Robert, Vasquez said, his voice uncharacteristically shaky. I didn't make the connection. The names were different. It was so long ago. But the damage was done. Thorne's trust, the foundation of his entire security apparatus, was shattered. He ordered Vasquez suspended and contacted his lawyer. The police, now aware of the call, were equally stunned. The case was no longer a simple abduction. It was a potential whistleblower act, a bombshell accusation of systemic failure and possible filial endangerment. The media, having caught wind of the suspended investigation and Thorne's shaken demeanor outside the police station, descended like wolves. Headlines shifted from Billionaire's daughter kidnapped to Waitress abductor claims, protective motive, and dark questions in Thorne custody case. The courtroom of public opinion was now in session. Driven by a volatile mix of panic and a dawning, horrifying need to know the truth, Thorne bypassed his own team. He used his tech resources to trace Emma's burn phone signal to a decaying prepaid cell tower covering a 200-square-mile rural area near the state forest. It was a needle in a haystack, but he also found something else. In the weeks before the abduction, Emma had made repeated, encrypted searches for remote properties owned by shell companies linked to the Thorne family trust. His own family's hidden assets, the summer cabins, the hunting lodges, places even he had forgotten about, places perfect for hiding. A cold realization settled over him. This wasn't a desperate flight. It was a meticulously planned extraction, funded with information that shouldn't have been accessible to a waitress. He confronted his family lawyer, an elderly man named Arthur who had managed the Thorne estate for decades. Under pressure, Arthur broke. 2 months ago, a woman claiming to be from Child Protective Services with impeccable forged credentials had conducted a routine asset verification for a pending custody review. He had granted her limited access to the property portfolio. He described her. It was Emma. She wasn't just hiding. She was using his family's own forgotten fortresses against him, and she had a 2-month head start to prepare one. The hunt was no longer about chasing a fleeing car. It was a race to guess which of his own properties she had turned into a sanctuary. Meanwhile, in a secluded cabin buried deep in pine forests, Emma watched Lily sleep. The little girl's nightmares had lessened. She was speaking again, in soft, complete sentences. On a locked tablet, Emma reviewed the files she'd risked everything for: the therapist's notes, the nanny's suspiciously timed resignation, the security logs from Thorne's estate that showed Vasquez repeatedly deleting footage from the nights of the accidents. She had enough to burn Robert Thorne's life to the ground, but that was never the goal. The goal was Lily, and as she scrolled to the final document, a scanned handwritten letter from Claire Thorne, mailed to the family court advocate's office 1 week before her death, she knew the stakes were even higher than she'd imagined. The letter spoke of fear, of threats, of a secret Claire was going to reveal. It ended with a plea: if anything happens to me, please don't let him have Lily. He's not what he seems. But Emma had tried. The system had ignored the letter, citing the ongoing custody dispute as motive for fabrication. Now the system was hunting her. She looked at the sleeping child, then at the storm clouds gathering over the pines. They would come soon, Thorne or the police or worse. She had one move left: a move that would force the truth into the open but would place Lily directly in the crossfire. She opened a new, untraceable email draft. She attached the letter. She attached the therapist's report. And she began to type, her fingers hovering over the key that would send it to the one person with the power and the motive to tear the whole story apart. Claire Thorne's sister, an investigative journalist who had never believed the official story of her sister's death. The send button glowed on the screen, a point of no return. Outside, the first roll of thunder echoed through the mountains. Emma pressed send. 200 miles away, Claire Thorne's sister Sarah saw the email notification flash on her screen. She opened it, and the quiet life she'd built since her sister's death shattered in an instant, because the letter wasn't just a plea for help. It was a map pointing to a secret bank account and a single name, the man Claire was meeting the night she died. Sarah, an investigative journalist who had been stonewalled by the official investigation, now had the fuel she needed. She authenticated the documents with forensic experts. The therapist's report was real. The security log deletions were real. And Claire's handwritten letter, with its familiar looping script and a private phrase only the sisters knew, was devastatingly real. Sarah published her first article that night, not in a major paper, but on a secure, independent platform. The headline was simple: "My sister was murdered. The system helped cover it up." The article went viral within the hour. It didn't accuse Robert Thorne directly. It presented the documents and asked the questions the police had refused to. Who stood to gain from Claire's death? Who had the resources to manipulate evidence? Who had a security chief with a history of discrediting child witnesses? The internet connected the dots with terrifying speed. The police were forced to react. They reopened Claire Thorne's case as a potential homicide. They brought Mark Vasquez in for formal questioning. Under pressure, Vasquez's story changed. He admitted he had, in fact, recognized parallels to the old case, but claimed he'd kept quiet on his lawyer's advice. He also revealed something new. In the weeks before Claire's death, Robert Thorne had asked him to run a deep background check on a man named David Ridge. David Ridge was a mid-level finance manager at Thorne's company. The background check came back clean, but Sarah, digging with the focus of a relative seeking vengeance, found what Vasquez missed. Ridge had been quietly funneling company funds through a series of offshore shells. Claire, who had an MBA and had worked in the Thorne accounting department early in their marriage, had discovered the embezzlement. She had scheduled a meeting with Ridge to confront him and get proof. That meeting was set for the night she died. The black sedan with the broken tail light, seen by Lily, was registered to a shell company, one that traced back to David Ridge. The police now had a new suspect, one whose motive had nothing to do with custody and everything to do with millions of stolen dollars. But the revelation exploded in Robert Thorne's face. Because if Claire had discovered corporate fraud and Thorne had fired Ridge just days after her death, a brutal new narrative emerged. Had Thorne discovered the embezzlement and the meeting and used it as the perfect opportunity to eliminate Claire and frame a subordinate? Public opinion turned into a mob. News vans surrounded Thorne's estate. His board of directors called an emergency meeting. The billionaire was now trapped in a nightmare of his own making, suspected of both endangering his child and orchestrating his wife's murder. In the cabin, Emma watched the storm of news on a battery-powered radio. Her plan was working, but a new fear gripped her. The police were now hunting David Ridge. If they caught him, they might close the case, declaring the threat gone. Lily would be returned to Thorne, and the deeper truth, the systemic neglect, the bought testimonies, the pattern, would be buried again under a tidier crime. She had to keep Lily safe until the whole rotten structure collapsed. But Thorne was moving. Isolated and desperate, he performed the only act of trust left to him. He went to the police with the list of his family's remote properties. "She's in one of these. Find her. Bring my daughter home. And when you do, put me in the room with Emma. No lawyers, no cameras." He needed to hear the accusation from her face to face. He needed to know if he was, in fact, the monster the world now believed him to be. A state police tactical unit, cross-referencing the list with recent satellite imagery, spotted anomalous heat signatures and a cleared driveway at a hunting lodge thought to be abandoned. They mobilized. Emma, using a handheld scanner tuned to police frequencies, heard the dispatch. They were 30 minutes out. She had prepared for this. She woke Lily gently, We have to play a hiding game, okay? A very quiet game. She led the girl to a hidden root cellar, stocked with water and blankets. I'll be back soon. Remember the secret knock. She closed the hatch, camouflaged it with a rug, and waited on the cabin porch, a figure of calm in the gathering twilight. The police didn't come with sirens. They emerged from the tree line in tactical gear, weapons lowered but ready. They found not a frantic kidnapper, but a woman with her hands visible, holding a manila envelope. "My name is Caitlin Morse," she said, her voice carrying in the cold air. "I am surrendering. The child is safe inside. Before you take me, you need to see this." She tossed the envelope to the lead officer. It contained copies of everything, plus a new addition. A signed affidavit from the fired nanny, detailing Vasquez's orders to leave Lily unsupervised at specific times. As they read, Thorne's private helicopter, which he had chartered against police advice, thundered overhead, landing in the nearby field. He jumped out, ignoring the shouted commands from police. His eyes locked on Emma. He stormed up the porch steps, the officers too stunned to intervene immediately. "Where is she?" he demanded, his voice cracked with exhaustion and rage. Emma looked at him, not with fear, but with a profound, weary pity. "She's safe, from the man who was paid to create accidents. But is she safe from you, Robert? The man who was too busy building an empire to see the enemy he hired standing guard at his door." Thorne staggered as if struck. The accusation wasn't about direct harm, it was about a blindness so vast it constituted betrayal. Before he could respond, a young officer ran from the cabin. "Sir, the cabin's empty. There's no one here." Emma smiled, a thin, sorrowful curve of her lips. "Of course not. You really think I'd bring her to the first place you'd look? She's with someone Clea trusted, the only person she ever really trusted." At that moment, Thorne's phone buzzed. It was Sarah, the journalist. Her voice was frantic. "Robert, I just got a tip. David Ridge was found. He's in a hotel room. He's dead. Apparent suicide, but he left a note. It says I couldn't live with what he made me do. And he is underlined 3 times. The pieces crashed together with horrific clarity. Vasquez hadn't just covered up past cases. He had been the architect. He identified vulnerable targets, wealthy, distracted fathers like the one in case 4517, like Robert Thorne. He then orchestrated crises to make the parent look unfit, creating a market for his own security services and perhaps blackmail. Clea's discovery of the fraud had presented a unique opportunity: eliminate her, frame Ridge, and further bind a terrified, guilt-ridden Thorne to his protector. Lily wasn't just a victim of neglect, she was a pawn in a long, profitable con. Emma saw the understanding dawn on Thorne's face. "You see it now," she whispered. "The monster wasn't in the boardroom, it was in the security office, and you paid his salary." The lead police officer, having skimmed the affidavit, barked new orders. "All units, locate and detain Mark Vasquez. Consider him armed and extremely dangerous." The mission had utterly transformed. They were no longer raiding a kidnapper's hideout. They were standing at the heart of a murder conspiracy, and the woman in handcuffs had been the only one trying to stop it. As they led Emma to a police car, she turned her head to Thorne one last time. "Find her, Robert. She's at the Botanical Gardens, in the Butterfly Conservatory. Clea took her there every Sunday. She feels safe there." Then she added, her voice breaking for the first time, "You have a chance to be the father she needs. But first, you have to destroy the world you built to protect yourself." The helicopter blades slowed. The police radios chattered. Robert Thorne stood alone in the dirt driveway, the vast, silent forest pressing in around him. His daughter was waiting in a butterfly house. His wife's true killer was still out there, possibly fleeing, and the woman who had stolen his child to save her was being taken to jail. The battle for Lily was over. The war for the truth and for his own soul was just beginning. Robert Thorne found Lily in the Butterfly Conservatory, sitting quietly on a bench with Sarah, her aunt. The little girl looked up, not with a smile, but with a quiet, waiting stillness. Thorne didn't rush. He knelt eye level and said the only true thing left: "I'm so sorry I didn't see." And in that moment, the real rescue began. The manhunt for Mark Vasquez ended 48 hours later at a border crossing. He was attempting to flee with a suitcase containing over $500,000 in untraceable cryptocurrency keys and passports under 3 aliases. He did not resist arrest. In his possession, police found a ledger. It was not a digital file, but an old-fashioned, leather-bound book. Inside were notes on over a dozen high-net-worth clients, detailing their vulnerabilities, their custody battles, and the interventions he had staged to make them dependent on his protection. Robert Thorne was just the latest entry. Case 4517 was the first. Vasquez cut a deal. He pleaded guilty to the murder of Claire Thorne, the attempted murder of Lily Thorne through staged accidents, the fraud against Thorne's company, and the manslaughter of the child in the prior case. In exchange for a sentence of life without parole instead of the death penalty, he provided full testimony. He confirmed everything. David Ridge had been his unwitting patsy, set up to take the fall for Claire's murder once she discovered the embezzlement Vasquez himself was running. The hit-and-run was a professional job, contracted through a channel Vasquez refused to name. The accidents, for Lily, were designed to look like the tragic failures of a distracted father, making Thorne eternally grateful to his vigilant security chief. It was a long, cruel con, and Thorne had been both its target and its bankroller. The public fallout was cataclysmic. Thorne's company stock plummeted. He stepped down as CEO and sold a controlling stake. The majority of the proceeds went into two trusts, one to fund cold case units specializing in contested custody deaths, and one for Lily. He gave full access to his records to Sarah and a team of independent journalists. The resulting exposé won awards and reformed state laws on custody evaluations and private security licensing. But the personal reckoning was quieter and harder. Lily began intensive therapy. Thorne attended every session. He sold the estate, with its memories of gilded neglect, and moved into a smaller home near the botanical gardens. He learned to make pancakes. He learned to be present. The father who had once signed $200 million deals during breakfast now knew the exact way his daughter liked her orange juice, with no pulp and 2 ice cubes. Legal case against Caitlin Morse, the waitress known as Emma, became a national debate. The district attorney, facing immense public pressure, initially pursued charges of kidnapping, custodial interference, and forgery, but the evidence she provided was the backbone of the case against Vasquez. Claire's letter, authenticated, changed everything. At a preliminary hearing, Lily's court-appointed child advocate testified that, in her professional opinion, Caitlin Morse's actions had likely saved the girl's life. Thorne, in a move that stunned the legal world, took the stand not for the prosecution, but for the defense. He looked at Caitlin across the courtroom and said, "She saw the fire when I was admiring the smoke. My pride, my status, my entire world was the kindling. She didn't kidnap my daughter. She pulled her from the burning building I was too blind to see." The judge, in a landmark ruling, dismissed the felony charges. Caitlin Morse pleaded guilty to a single misdemeanor count of falsifying credentials and was sentenced to 2 years of probation and 300 hours of community service, with a recommendation to work with child advocacy nonprofits. The story seemed to find its closure, but then a final, surprising detail emerged, one known only to Thorne, Sarah, and Caitlin. While packing up Claire's personal effects from a storage unit, Sarah found a sealed envelope addressed to Robert. Inside was a short note and a key. The note read, "Robert, if you're reading this, the worst has happened. The key is for a safety deposit box. It holds the proof of the embezzlement and my will. I left everything to Lily in a trust managed by Sarah. I love you, but I don't trust the world you live in anymore. Protect our girl, Claire." The box had been set up the month before she died. It contained the definitive proof she was going to use against David Ridge, but it also contained a copy of her will, which named Sarah as Lily's guardian in the event of her death, citing grave concerns about Robert's ability to prioritize family. Claire had seen the danger, not from Robert's malice, but from the corrosive ecosystem his wealth and ambition had created. She had tried to build a legal lifeline for her daughter. Caitlin Morse, in her own desperate way, had become the physical embodiment of that lifeline when the legal one failed. Thorne framed the note. He kept it on his desk, next to a picture of Lily, Claire, and himself from happier times. It was no longer a shrine to guilt, but a compass. A reminder that the most precious things are fragile and that protection sometimes doesn't look like a fortress, but like a waitress in a diner, willing to burn her own life down to save a child. Caitlin Morse moved to a small town upstate. She works as a paralegal for a nonprofit that represents children in custody cases. She and Thorne do not speak, but once a year, on the anniversary of that day in the diner, he donates a substantial sum to her organization in Lily's name. The note with the donation always reads the same: "Thank you for seeing her." The story of the billionaire, the waitress, and the missing child faded from the headlines, replaced by fresher scandals. But in a quiet house near a garden, a father tucks his daughter into bed each night. And in a small office, a woman fights for children she will never meet. The system had broken, and two broken people, in their collision, accidentally forged a fix. Not a perfect one, but a real one. And as the credits roll on this chapter, the next one is being written in the quiet, careful choices of a life rebuilt. A life where the most important deal is the one you keep with the people you love. So what is the true cost of looking away? This story was never just about a billionaire and a waitress. It was a fracture in the mirror we hold up to ourselves, asking how we judge a stranger's desperate act. We began with a simple, shocking premise: a child taken in broad daylight. The easy narrative was kidnapping. The truth was protection. Caitlin Morse crossed every legal and ethical line because the lines drawn by the system had already failed. She represents the terrifying, necessary question: when all proper channels are broken, do we have a moral duty to become the circuit breaker, even if it destroys us? The statistics we uncovered at the start are not just numbers. Over 200,000 family abductions each year, 78% perpetrated by family. But within that staggering figure are hidden countless stories like Lily's: children caught not between strangers, but between failure and fear. The law sees a parent's right, but what of a child's right to simply be safe? Robert Thorne's journey is a testament to a different kind of blindness, not of malice, but of privilege. He built walls to keep danger out, never realizing the most dangerous threat was the one he hired to guard the gate. His redemption wasn't found in winning Lily back, but in dismantling the very fortress that had made her a target. He learned that true security isn't about control, it's about attention. The kind of attention a waitress paid to a silent little girl in her section. This case forces us to sit with uncomfortable ambiguity. Was Caitlin Morse a criminal or a hero? The court's dismissal suggests the latter, but her methods live in a gray zone that makes society deeply uneasy. Because if we applaud her, do we sanction vigilantism? Yet if we condemn her, what do we say to the next child whose cry for help is lost in paperwork and paid testimonies? Perhaps the real lesson is in the pattern. From the documented case of Flavin Carvalho, the waitress who saved a boy with a secret note, to Caitlin Morse's drastic intervention, they share a common thread: the courage to see past the facade of a normal family dinner, to question the convenient story, to risk everything on the chance that your gut feeling about someone's pain is right. The systems we build to protect the vulnerable are only as strong as the human conscience operating them. They can be gamed by men like Vasquez. They can be stalled by bureaucracy. They can be blinded by wealth and status. Sometimes, the only thing that stands between a child and catastrophe is the willingness of one ordinary person to do an extraordinary thing, regardless of the cost to themselves. So we are left with this final reflection. Every day, we walk past people carrying invisible battles: the parent struggling, the child retreating, the person serving us who might be fighting a war we cannot imagine. The surface story is rarely the whole truth. This is the power of perspective. It can condemn an innocent man or redeem a flawed one. It can villainize a savior or sanctify a villain. Our first judgment is almost always wrong because we see actions, not intentions. We see the moment, not the chain of events that led to it. The story of Lily Thorne is a closed case, but the question it asks remains open, echoing in every courtroom, every family dinner, every moment we choose to see or to look away. Who around you is silently asking for help in a language you haven't learned to hear yet? We want to hear from you. Have you ever profoundly misjudged a situation or a person, only to have the real story stop you in your tracks? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story shifted something in your perspective, subscribe. Because understanding the hidden layers of the human story is how we build a world where fewer children need a rescuer in a waitress's apron. Thank you for watching.